Hello, 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 and welcome back to WNHH Community Radio. This is Arts Respond, and I'm Lucy Gellman. This is our now weekly collaboration with the Arts Council of Greater New Haven, where I'm so proud to edit the arts paper. So today we have that sexy little music intro from Tabisa. I love it. It's like some smooth jazz playing me into the weekend. And today I'm really excited that my guests are Professor M, the Black Kingpin of Swagger, with the voice to make you stagger, and Vivian Laflamme. And we are talking about burlesque. Specifically, we're talking about the Sugar Strut Burlesque Review at Jazzy's Cabaret, which will be returning. There was a wonderful, wonderful article in the New Haven Independent about the first iteration, which was in January, and I am so excited that it will be returning on Sunday, March 20th with 2 shows. So we'll talk about that, but we're also going to talk about burlesque, which I find is this magnificent and often very misunderstood thing. So let's get right into it and make the most of our time together. I would love to just toss out there, when someone comes to either a show or says to one of you, okay, I don't know what burlesque really is, what's the 2-minute elevator speech to kind of get someone familiarized with that world?
Okay, I'll give it a go, and then Marvin can fill in other blanks of it too from his perspective. But for me, so burlesque had a start, I'd say basically back in the vaudeville days. There might have been a little bit more before that, but they traveled with kind of minstrel shows and things like that. It was, these were shows for the people. They were shows that were a little bit bawdy, a little bit naughty. It wasn't like high arts. So it kind of gave more of like a grassroots, not quite that way, feeling of doing art. And I think when people think of burlesque, they ask if I'm a stripper or anything like that, which technically we're all in that same family. But I feel like burlesque has more of a storyline to it rather than just taking off your clothes to take off your clothes. I mean, that's where we kind of all get at the end. But for me, burlesque has that story behind it, whether it's classic burlesque, neo burlesque, or any other esque you want to put a label to. I feel like there's a story behind it, and you try to get the audience to have a connection with that or feel something with that. I could definitely expand, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, Professor M, jump in, please.
Yeah, we're getting into the burl and the esque, the burl of the esque and the esque of the burl. When people ask me about what burlesque is, often I try to pull something from pop culture that maybe they're somewhat familiar with. And given a lot of the circles that we run around in, saying something like Moulin Rouge, it makes it very easy to say, oh, there's like a giant show and it's live entertainment. There's lots of sparkles and spangles. There's a lot of fringe and rhinestones and sometimes even real diamonds. I don't know. Lots of fancy hair, lots of fancy makeup, and it's all about the performance in your face that, when it comes down to it, is what they call the art of striptease, and striptease is a big part of this. Yes, we strip, we take clothes off. It is a part of the performance of what we do. It's a part of the storytelling that we put together, and people may think of the pasties and the tassel twirling and the rhinestone G-strings and all that fun stuff. And that's all really cool. But at the end of the day, it's about the tease of everything. Once the clothes are off, then the story's over, the show is over. And that's usually when everybody runs away. So, part of how the pasties and the G-strings became a part of it was because of getting around obscenity laws and all that sort of stuff, and say, okay, well, we'll just show this, and that will be that. But in sort of the modern form of it, the best way that I like to describe burlesque is a celebration of life in the bodies that we have. And through burlesque, the modern version of it that I guess at this point is going back about a little over 20 years at this point, sort of the modern burlesque movement. It's so much of it is about embracing all sizes, all shapes, all colors, everything. And for me, it's very much about being able to celebrate life in your body and to be able to show the body as both as it is and with a little bit of showbiz razzle dazzle to say this is the most elevated version of my body as it is that I would like to show to you. And especially I think for people coming from marginalized communities and women of all shades that often in our mainstream society, these bodies are objects to be leered at, to be commodified, all that sort of thing. But it's different if it's someone who decides to look at their body as it is and say, this is beautiful. And I want to share that with people. And I want to share my joy in the body that I have. And if I can do that, and I can step on this stage in front of all these people and share that joy in my body with other people, then you can have joy in your body too. You can celebrate life in your body too. And especially doing all of this during COVID, if there was any time to celebrate life in your body, it's been now.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, this is great in that my question was going to be, for people, because I've heard people kind of say, well, it's just TNA and alcohol. And actually, I think
Which are great things, by the way.
Which are all great. They're great. Like I want to say this show is, we've said it before on the show is pro-sex, the show is pro-TNA. If you drink, please drink responsibly, but we are not teetotalers here at WNHH Community Radio. But I wanted to ask you, and Professor M, you kind of got at it, how this can be empowering, especially now. And Vivian, I would love to know from you also, and then I would love to know what drew both of you to the field, because burlesque to me seems kind of like, it seems kind of like medieval studies, like it finds you, you don't find it.
I don't know, Marvin, do you want to go ahead first since I went first last time?
Oh boy. Yeah, there was a lot of questions, so I'm trying to remember what all the questions were. But yeah, the idea of how can burlesque be empowering? I mean, I'll give my side of it. I come into this as a cisgender, generally heterosexual dude. So, people don't look to me for those things exactly. But I have my own journeys with that. And for me, going to burlesque can be so many different things. And often burlesque comes from a place of comedy and using, and looking at sex as something that is funny. And, and there's a lot about sex that is funny and messy and weird and strange. And using that sort of that idea of something beautiful or something attractive to then put some comedy into it or put a story into it that can take you where you didn't think you were going to go, or surprise you with some stuff that you didn't know was going on in that brain of yours. That burlesque works great in that way. And, but that doesn't mean that burlesque can't be sexy also. There are lots of people that do really sultry acts. There are people that do very explicit stuff. There are people that don't. You can filter it through whatever way you want to filter it. And I think that's the adaptability of burlesque is part of what makes it really fun. And also the idea of empowering that because you can filter whatever parts of yourself you want to through this form, you can really use it as a way to tell people a bit about who you are and a bit about what what you think and what you feel. And for me, having done theater and stuff like that before this, it was theater and performance was the one way that I came to understand that I could be in a room full of people and I could say something or do something, and everybody actually understood what I was trying to say or do. And it didn't happen that way for me in pretty much any other avenue except performance for a long time. And being able to do something like burlesque, and it works its best when you see your audience and your audience sees you, and you see each other as just these human beings who are just trying to get along, just trying to do things that feel good to yourself and to your soul, to your spirit, and affirm those things that make us feel good about ourselves, and also affirms the dignity of others. For me, that is part of what's empowering about it. But also, even as cishet guy, that being comfortable with my body, and being comfortable with my body as it is, or my body as I work on it, in whatever way it looks and whatever way it moves, and how that changes from day to day. Burlesque became a challenge to say, you're going to take this body that pretty much no one sees, and you're going to put this out here in front of people in a way that they're not used to seeing it. They don't even see this at the beach, and or in a totally different context. And I started doing the striptease elements myself when we launched our Scandalous Saturday show at Troop 429 in Norwalk back in 2021, after a 14 months layoff from doing any live burlesque in person. We had first started doing that show, Viv and I, March 7th, 2020. And it was so good, it shut down the world for a year. And then we came back in June of 2021, that like halcyon period when everybody had vaccines, and it was great. And it was like the first like Pride in person in a while. And I put my body out there. I had to look at different clothes to have and different gear to get, and all the stripper gear, all the stripper wear, all the fun stuff, because I also just got tired of the general paradigm of, here are all these women wearing all these fancy clothes that they then get rid of throughout the show, and then me wearing all the clothes in the world, like all of them. Like, I'm not just wearing a suit, I'm wearing a three-piece suit, or I'm not just wearing a suit, I'm wearing a suit with rhinestones, I'm wearing a hat, I'm wearing shoes, I'm wearing a tie, I'm wearing, a shirt, I'm wearing stuff, I have like undergarments and foundational things under that to make sure everything fits right. And I'm like, sometimes I'm wearing a cape and all this other stuff on top of all of that, right? And at the end of a show, it was always like me wearing all the clothes in the world, and then like 3 or 4 women wearing like none. And I was like, this is getting dull. Like, I don't, this feels out of balance somehow. And also, why am I letting all of my naked friends have all of the naked fun and not me?
Well, so Viv, let's hop to you. I would love to know for you, because I feel, as someone who identifies as a woman, I feel like sometimes women can be the sharpest critics of other women, and women often love to judge each other. Like, either you don't have enough clothes on, or you have too many clothes on. The things I've heard women, so I don't like the S word or the W, any of those words to describe women. And so I'm wondering for you, in what ways can burlesque be a tool of empowerment? Because for as many folks as I've heard get really excited after they see the show and they say, wow, my body is beautiful. I feel beautiful. I feel empowered, whether they have a skinny body or a fat body or a disabled body, or live at any number of those intersections. I've also heard people say, why would you do that?
Oh, believe me. Yeah, I've definitely heard that. I think one of the weirdest things to ever hear at a show people come up to me and say, "You're so brave." And I'm like, brave. I mean, okay, yes, it can be hard to take your clothes off in front of strangers, but it is performance. So there is like that wall there. And especially with burlesque, there's generally not touching of the audience. There's not that kind of interaction where like maybe a strip club or drag queens, where there is more interaction. So I always kind of just smile and say, well, thanks. You could get up here and do this too if you wanted. And that's really, honestly, at the end of the day, that's what it is what you want to do. I mean, I've certainly had people say, oh my God, why do you do that? You know, they're staring at you. And I think that comes from a place of judgment on where your body is, whether you're comfortable with it, uncomfortable with it, think that you don't have big enough boobs, or you have too big boobs, or your belly, or your butt, or, you know, and we are all like our own worst critics often. Look at ourselves and go, oh, I like that, but I don't like that, you know, and it could be any range of anything. And believe me, I have certainly played that game with myself. But yeah, so when I hear brave, I always kind of think that's kind of a backhanded compliment, because it's like it's almost like a judgment, like I wouldn't do that if I were you. And I'm like, well, then don't. You know, I am up here, and I am doing this. And I think part of it is like what Marvin said before, like especially for him being Black, that it's kind of like you've got to see it to believe it, to be it, kind of thing. And you know, I'm definitely not in my 20s, you know, and my body has definitely changed since I've started doing this. I've been doing burlesque for 12 years now. So it's, you know, but you have a body, and bodies don't stay exactly the same, and all of that. And I think it's just kind of really is like what Marvin said, a celebration of your body, you know. And what I like about burlesque is that you kind of get to be smart. You kind of get to make a joke and bring the audience in on it with you. And it's like maybe your reveal is, you know, something funny, or you're doing something nerdy, and people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this, or whatever. And you're like, yeah, you got it, excellent, you know. So, and I've certainly done stuff and people are like, what was that? You know, and that's okay too, because you know what, you're pushing boundaries and you're making people think. And I've had people come up to me after a show and they're like, I really thought that act was about XYZ. And I was like, nope, it was about EQ and R, but I'm glad you got X, Y, and Z out of it, you know.
That's so funny. And, you know, for you, so what was that catalyst 12 years ago? Was it like, hey, I think maybe I'll try this thing once? Or were you, you know, did you have a moment where you thought, I really want to be investing in this?
Yeah. So I had some friends that were in the scene already, and they were doing burlesque. And I'm trying to make it a short story. I went to an open mic night and saw a surf band performing, and I was like, "Oh, you guys really need go-go's, like 60s style go-go dancers," which is a whole other story. When I say I go-go dance, people are like, "Oh, you're a stripper," and I'm like, "That's another side." But no, I'm, you know, explain the 60s style. So anyway, I actually started doing go-go dancing with that band. And some of my friends that were also burlesque performers danced with them occasionally too. And then I started going to burlesque shows. But I think my big awakening was I went to a burlesque show in New York City. It was actually a Pulp Fiction themed one. And a girl came out on stage. She did a little bit of her act, and she pulled a cheeseburger out of her underwear and ate it on stage. And I was just like, yes, ma'am. And she had cellulite, and you know, she wasn't like the typical stick figure with boobs. I was like, yes, that's this. This is what I want. And if that's doing it, I can do that. And yes. So after that, a friend and I enrolled in classes at the New York School of Burlesque. And we took a series, and then there was a student showcase, and we got on stage, and I've been going since then. Long story short.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the Sugar Strut and how it was born. But to get there, we have to wade a little bit through the fact that we're still in a global pandemic. And Marvin, Professor M, I love that you said your act was so good it shut the world down. But for both of you as artists and specifically performing artists, so we've had a number of drag queens on the show, and I've talked to um, folks who are in that world. So I feel like you also straddle this line as burlesque performers, where maybe you are very much considered performing artists by some folks who are in the know, and then by other people who are like, but you're not unionized Broadway actors, so don't, like, talk to the hand, that doesn't count. um what did COVID do to you, for like, what was that period like? Because the world sort of stopped overnight. And I felt like for at least 6 months, but usually much longer than that, I was hearing horror stories from people who just, I mean, it was like within 24 to 48 hours, they had lost 6 to 8 months of income.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
all that is very true. And there's a whole mix of people who do this work. You have people who do this professionally, as in this is what they do to make a living, and they're working multiple gigs a week, and they often have like standing gigs and shows that they make and they produce, and they have LLCs and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got somebody like me who has a day career, and then I come in and I do this also. And and so for me, this isn't what burlesque isn't what I do to make a living. Though you definitely don't get to do it for the money. I haven't ascended to that. Sometimes people ask me, hey, so when are you just gonna just start doing this for as your job? And I'm like, when it pays what my current job pays, then sure, I will do that.
oh, believe me. Yeah. I have a lot of people say that to me too. They're like, oh, you must make so much money doing it. I'm like, passion project. Passion
Yeah.
project.
I'm like, look, many times if there's enough money for me to fill the gas tank in my car and drive back home, then I chalk that up as a win.
Yeah, which is sort of how freelance reporting is. So I hear you there. Yeah.
But it was really tough for a lot of people that we know, especially like folks in New York, who this is what they do to make a living. And then there are people who do this at night, but they also work in the performing arts as their main career also. And so it was a double hit on that. Like there are people we know, such as Samson Knight, who is a burlesque performer, but he also is a dancer on Broadway and performs in The Lion King and stuff like that. So where you have people that are costumers or designers or stage crew or are just acting, and trying to get acting jobs and all that sort of stuff. So there's definitely like a wide range of people, and not being able to do this and not have that income come in was a lot of hearing horror stories about unemployment, office calls. I don't know if you remember, Vivian, but I remember like Jezebel Express just like detailing over Instagram and Facebook her days and hours of trying to get unemployment in the early days of COVID in New York.
Let's not talk about unemployment, but yes.
It's, I mean, I feel like that, even the, like, let's not talk about unemployment. I feel like, again, horror stories. I just heard horror stories from people. And it was like, for the one person who broke through that wall, because for a while it really was, I would know 10 people who just couldn't, like, they were calling, they'd call like 45 times. They'd done all of the requisite paperwork, and still they just, like, nothing happened. Or they would get verification, and then it would be months until they actually got payment.
Yeah. I like Marvin, had a day job. So I was just doing burlesque at night for fun. And at first, when the pandemic hit, when I was actually working from home before the pandemic. So that wasn't that much of a change for me, but it did hit me pretty hard that, our arts and our fun, and it's like kind of like I have a friend who explains it. For him, art is like touching the third rail on a subway. Like you get that shock, and he said, and you'll hear a lot of artists talk about it, all different types of art, that they feel like they're channeling some sort of divine thing. And I think that's kind of like what keeps us alive. However, about a year ago, I got laid off, and I was like, my whole life changed, and there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people that took a look at the pandemic as either like, what the heck is going on in my life, or what am I doing? And I gotta either become an adult and get a regular job and all of that stuff, or they were like, no way, life is short. I'm gonna move into the arts and I'm gonna do what I want, and nobody can tell me otherwise. I've seen people, kind of post both sides of it. Luckily, when I got to, start performing again, and that was good. And then I did get a job, and I've since gotten laid off again. But I'm about to start a new job, which is a good thing. But I am fighting with unemployment. I haven't gotten any money from them this go round, and that's a whole other story. But whatever. I think lost my train of thought also, but it's been.
It's like doing this keeps us going, right? It's like, I remember talking with Sarah Lemieux, great musician, and that we've gotten to do stuff with vaudeville and everything. And for her as a musician, the performing for other people part is not really a core part of her making her art. And she can, she would tell me like, yeah, I can write my songs and play my songs and I'm good. And, and I said, well, that doesn't work for what I do. Because so much of what I do is based on performing this for other people directly in front of them. And trying to do burlesque virtually is really difficult.
I was going to bring that up non-existent. Too. Yeah, like a lot of people did the pivot during the pandemic, whatever direction that was, and a lot of the shows went virtual. And it's very hard to. I mean, I did one show actually with Marvin, and it was with the State House Cabaret. I filmed it here in my living room. It was a sweltering hot day. My
looks great though.
My pasties were sweating off, literally. It was ridiculous. But it was just very odd to be like fully dressed, everything, and it was just my cats watching. I really feed off of that performance stuff. But the other side of it, which is good, is that the virtual shows allowed a lot of people that maybe wouldn't have come to a show before to see those, like maybe people with physical disabilities or whatever. Maybe they couldn't get to a venue, or people that maybe didn't have like a ride to get somewhere. They could pay the fee to watch something online or whatever, and there was more exposure that way. And a lot of performers that didn't feel comfortable getting out or couldn't get out themselves due to whatever reason with the pandemic, they were still able to perform. However, I mean, it is different. I mean, there's nobody cheering for you. There's not that camaraderie of backstage. There's not, like, there's definitely something to be said about, oh my gosh, I've got to get ready and I've got to throw all my stuff in my bag and got to get there and put on my face, and like becoming Vivian, and finally, like, again, channeling that and being like, okay, here I am, but in the meantime, you talk to your friends, the producer, the bar owner, and then you get to see everybody in the audience and you do your thing. And at the end, you're like, all right, that was great, and you hang out with your friends at the end, whether you're having a drink or maybe you go to a diner or something like that. And all of that fell off. And it was just like,
right.
That was heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking. And I know that's like, that was like kind of a lot of privilege there to have that and to be able to do that. But at the same time, it's just like, I realize that, I look at that, I see that, I recognize it, and I want it. I want it back. I want it back for everybody.
And I also think there there's this dancer in New Haven who dances with Elm City Dance Collective and a couple others named Lindsay Bauer. And Lindsay has said, like, everybody's heart is hard. So she has just repeated that through. So I just want to hold that, like, everybody's heart is hard. And maybe what you described to some people is a first world problem. And also it's hard, right? So so we'll just take that. But one thing, Vivian, that this is great. Like, I feel like you're getting my questions before I get to them, which is so fantastic. So I want to talk about the rebirth or the birth of the Sugar Strut at Jazzy's. And I want to shout out Jason V. Watts, who is just a wonderful human in the New Haven community. And we are so, so lucky to have Jazzy's Cabaret in the Ninth Square. The way that it has been able to bring life back to and activate that corner is really, really exciting after several years when it was just a vacant storefront. So Jason, if you're out there listening, thank you for being a fantastic human. And Stephen J. Ross, who just makes amazing food, which is
that food is so good.
Part of performance.
We did our show in January, and we were like, and Jason was like, "Yeah, we'll feed you, you know." And we were like, "All right, mostly we'll need the food for after the show." And he's like, "Okay, we'll hold some for you, And then, like, when we finally got to eat the food, like, one, it's and Jason was like, "You're not just saying it's good because, like, you haven't eaten in like 5 hours, right?" I'm like, "No, this food is fantastic." Like, we boxed it up, we took it home, like the spices, the flavors, like, no, I don't joke about food, I don't lie about food. Like, this body
Chef
eats.
Stephen Ross, yes, he is holding it down. I hope he's listening. And so tell me about the birth of this show and then working with Jason to make Jazzy's its home, because there are a couple places that have been home to Burlesque in New Haven. And I would love to know about bringing the Sugar Strut to Jazzy's, and also, what you are hoping for the growth of this series as it evolves.
Sure. And don't mind, my neighbor of all the times decided to vacuum all the floors right now. That's just how it goes. This life is all right.
Going by, so
the noise canceling is working. All right, very good. Yay, technology! It came through this one time. But like many things that are connected to Jason Watts, it really began with Jason. And one of the things about doing these shows and everything that you hope happens is that you just make a good product, and people come and see it, people come and hear about it, and then they just find you. Sometimes you find the work, sometimes the work finds you. And I've known Jason for a bunch of years. I went to a bunch of his different events because for those who don't know, he's been promoting events for like 15 years in this state with the Urban Professionals Network. And, and as like a then like Black yuppie, because I'm not so young anymore, like being able to go to his events and see a bunch of like professionals of color and professionals of all the colors together, just hanging out, eating food, having a good time. It was definitely something that I needed. And we had kept in touch over the years. And then in December, he just DM'd me on Instagram one time and said, "Hey, I have this idea for a show. Let's talk." And so we talked on the phone, and he talked about how everything he was doing with Jazzy's, and I'd been keeping up with seeing just like how it was coming together and his idea of the concept and everything. And he said, "I want to do a burlesque thing here, and you're the guy to talk to about that." And I said, "Okay, sure." And so we just sort of started figuring out what this thing could look like. And immediately, given how the space is a supper club and the sort of like urban sophisticate vibe that he was going for, Harlem Renaissance just jumped out immediately as that would be the inspiration and the touchstone. And so he and I started talking about it. And I said, this is Burlesque in New Haven, and I cannot in good conscience do that without bringing in Vivian LaFlamme, who is, who is the, how do I describe Vivian LaFlamme in New Haven Burlesque? Like you're the OG.
Currently,
have
one up anyway. But sadly, sadly, the scene is kind of, it's morphed into other stuff. People's lives change. So I'm currently like the only one really holding it down now.
Yeah, and I said, Vivian is well experienced. She, we've worked a billion shows together. She is the longest tenured, most active burlesque performer in the state at this point, and she's local to New Haven, and like there's no way that I would do this and not bring her on as a part of it. That would just not sit right with me. That wouldn't feel good to me, and it just wouldn't be cool. And also, with this being a sort of like, with it being Harlem Renaissance theme, with it being Black performer facing and Black performer to centered also, Vivian has, over the years that we've worked together, she's been really like a fighter for diversifying what burlesque is and diversifying burlesque in Connecticut also. And so I said, if there is an opportunity for us to do that, then this is it, because also we're not doing it by ourselves. Often when you do these sort of shows, you come in with the concept, you come in with the money, you come in with the people, you come in with all that stuff, and maybe you get a venue that likes you enough to do it, and maybe that venue is run well enough to sustain it, and maybe they'll want to invest in it themselves and promote it and all that sort of stuff. But often that doesn't happen, and to be fair, like they don't have to. But for something like this, it really needs big buy-in from a venue. And I've been lucky to have now worked with I now have 3 different things going with really great venues who really believe in what we're doing. And, at Troop 429, at Connecticut Cigar Company, and now Jazzy's Cabaret with Jason. And so we came together and we just started jam sessioning on this. We went over to the restaurant, checked out the space, all 6,000 square feet of it, and all of the multiple rooms.
It's a wonderful space. It's super cool, and there's some future ideas. And I certainly would be remiss to not thank you, Marvin, for sure, for having me come in on this, but also Jason taking a chance on me, because I know it is more so like a Black and person of color space. So, and I am not. So, I certainly recognize that, and am very appreciative that, I can step in and do what I can there.
I was muted. You'd think after 2 years of doing this, I would have figured it out, but no, maybe not. So I also wanted to ask, not only is there this wonderful Harlem Renaissance theme, but a number of artists I've talked to, Stella Abdusabor jumps to mind, who worked on the City of New Haven's Cultural Equity Plan and runs Black Haven, which is a fantastic film festival, has often said that she feels that New Haven is in the midst of a renaissance itself, a cultural renaissance, and specifically a Black cultural renaissance. And so I'm wondering if you feel that walking into Jazzy's and being able to activate the space with burlesque, which is different than, so Jazzy's, again, just, showing some love for Jason. I looked at Jazzy's calendar, and literally almost every day there was something. And, if burlesque isn't for you, then probably the author's talk the day before is for you. Or and so there's a little something for everyone, which I love. But does it feel like being in the midst of a renaissance, especially as we come out of this COVID moment and yet are still juggling an ongoing pandemic?
Yeah, doing the first show that we got to do there and at the end of January, and now we're getting ready for one on March 20th. What was really cool about it was looking out at the crowd and being like, oh, I don't know most of the people in here.
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
it's, because there are the burlesque faithful, and and not all of them are friends and family, but a decent amount of them are, right? And some of them, became friends just because we all just kept going to the same shows all the time. In fact, that's how Vivian and I became friends. Vivian talked about Dancing Go-Go, and one of the earliest pictures I have of Viv is from like 2009 in a 60s go-go sequin outfit. And little did I know, like, oh, we were going to become like real friends at some point. Because there's always a moment where you're show friends, but are you going to become real friends? And you have to just speak it. You have to actually say, like, okay, we're going to be real friends now. We're no longer just show friends. We're now real friends, and we like go to each other's houses, and we're going to eat meals and like and all that sort of stuff.
We eat together, and like I have your number in my phone. That's it. That's
and like we can wear T-shirts and jeans around each other. Right. There are some people who have never seen me not in a suit.
Right. Yeah. We definitely have been non-sparkly together. So.
Yeah, we have been non-sparkly many times. But being able to go to a space like Jazzy's and to say, like, okay, this may be a crowd who, for the majority, doesn't know what burlesque is or is not as acquainted with burlesque as we are, but to be able to show them, like, you've seen burlesque. You actually know more burlesque than you may think. And there's so much of what's out in the culture now that would fit right at home inside burlesque. And you look at where hip hop has gone and how many women are now like back doing it. And a lot of the aesthetics are showgirl aesthetics. A lot of the aesthetics are, would fit within burlesque. Whether it's the straight up exotic dancer and stripper stuff, all the way to burlesque looking showgirl things. Saweetie was on SNL a few months ago, and she was there in a full showgirl burlesque outfit with dancers on point doing bar stuff. Or you look at what Megan Thee Stallion's doing, you look at what Lizzo's been up to, you look at the City Girls, you look at Chloe and of course the Queen Mother Beyonce, and then you can go all the way back to Janet Jackson and everything. And it's like, no, like there's so much within burlesque that is within the heart of American pop dance entertainment. And at the heart of American pop dance entertainment is Black people and Black women specifically. And also with like the pole dance and fitness like renaissance that's been happening also, that there's a lot of that we've been a part of shows where that's been in it as like part of like a drag burlesque variety, like showgirl sort of environment. And so they're all related to each other, and being able to show those relationships, and while also digging into this part of a history to say like, oh, like, let's connect what we're doing now to where some of the stuff came from. And I think there's just a lot of room to not just celebrate all of this history and celebrate all this cool modern stuff, because we went from Fats Waller to like doing the thong song. But also that the more we do this, the more people who see it, there are going to be people in that audience that are going to see us do this and say, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I can do that. I can be a part of that. I have this, I have XYZ in me. I know I can do this. And seeing that sort of like Plinko chip slide into
see the girl on stage with
people.
Cellulite and pulling a cheeseburger out of your underwear and eating it, and you're like,
exactly.
That's it.
I want to
exactly.
like, even just hearing about her, I'm like, can I be her? Can I do that? Can I do that and keep my comfy, cozy clothes on? That's like really like my torso is always cold. There would have to be some workaround, right?
Well, we were joking about that. I forget what show it was recently, but it was so cold, and I'm like, I don't want to have to take my clothes off, to put my fancy clothes back on,
I know, yeah.
to take them off on stage. I'm like, can I just show my wrist and like, woo, pull up my coat?
We're gonna do Victorian style next.
Yeah,
we'll do that next.
I have seen a show like that, or a girl perform like that, or a person perform like that, where I think it was a woman. She did kind of more of like a Victorian style, and she like revealed her ankles and her wrists, and that was the only reveal in the show. I mean, and everything was covered like basically neck to floor, but then she just pulled up her skirts a little bit, and that's, you saw a petticoat and you were like, whoa, what's coming?
Yeah,
and then saw an ankle, and it was like escandalo,
I know.
I think,
I always have a lot of fun with that too, because whenever we start a show, like I go through all the rules and all the stuff about what to do and what not to do, and and being able to talk about how within this little space, you can yell at a pretty woman, and that you can't do that anywhere else. But do it, but here, like, we'll show you how to do that. And, and because
I've had people yell at me, take it off. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to get there. Believe me. Like, you're going to get
like that, that will happen.
But you're going to do it on your terms, right? Like, that's the point.
Right. So we're like, we're doing this on our terms, so we'll show you how to cheer for this on our terms. And, and for the most part, people are there for it. I haven't had to use the muscles under the suit yet.
Yeah.
Often, increasingly for me, it's if I take the clothes off, then they're coming after me. And then I have to be like, okay, like, please, like this way, because sometimes they're like, oh, it's a man, he can take this, and I'm like, but what if I don't want to? What if I don't?
That's
like,
right.
I can say I can say no too, guys.
Yeah, that is correct. Oh yeah, I was gonna say I hate saying it, but we have about 2 minutes left. And I just want to make sure I shout out the event. We could go on for 4 more hours. We could do a follow-up show about consent, and I think maybe we should, and just talk about how great enthusiastic consent is. And yes, and how men also get to use consent. It's not, yes. But I want our listeners to know the Sugar Strip Burlesque Review at Jazzy's Cabaret will be in New Haven on Sunday, March 20th. With dinner and a show at 8 p.m. and a late show, it sounds fun and tantalizing, at 10 p.m. That's after my bedtime, but it's probably not after some of our listeners' bedtime. And tickets are available at UPN events, that's one word, .com. I want to thank both of you so much, Vivian Laflamme and Professor M, for joining me. And in our last 2 minutes together, I want to know, we always try to end on a high note, even though literally there are a lot of really horrible things going on right now. The world is on its head. But if both of you could just tell me, something that is giving you joy. It doesn't have to be in the burlesque world. It can be a song. It can be your cat, Vivian, who I saw before the episode. It can be anything. I would love to know.
Yeah, cats. I have a new job, which is like making me hopeful. I don't know, somebody new, and that's also making me hopeful, because love has been hard to find and hard to keep around. So, but yeah, more shows coming up. I'm doing modeling on Saturday for somebody that is a fantastic designer, and then yeah, Marvin and I have some more shows coming up, and more. And I hope everybody else out there gets more of what they want to, because we all need it. We all need it.
Professor M, take us out. And we will post where to find both of y'all on all the socials when we share this.
Excellent.
Oh, great. Yeah, the things that are bringing me joy. Well, this has been a really wild ride in the past year or so. So In my day job, I work at NBC Sports, and I am an editor and producers type of person there. And we just got done doing this thing called the Winter Olympics in Beijing. It had a lot of challenges, as you saw in the news, some of which were expected, some of which just sort of came right out of the blue or out of a testing vial, depending on which way you saw it. And that this was also 6 months after we had done another COVID Olympics in Tokyo, and working 28 straight days at a time, working 12 to 14 or more hours a day. It was a lot of work to do, but I'm very proud of the team that I got to be a part of to point cameras at all of that and make sense of it, because that's really all that we get to do. And I felt very proud about that, and very proud of the teams that I got to work for to do that. And somehow this time I decided to do the rather insane thing of also doing 3 different gigs while I was also working on the Olympics. I didn't have a lot of room to compartmentalize my life this time. But it all came together and it all came through. And part of that, it was because all 3 of those gigs involved this woman here. So it's good.
I love that. Thank you both so much. You have made my afternoons so joyous. So I appreciate it. Professor M and Vivian Laflamme, people can catch you in many different places, including at Jazzy's Cabaret on March 20th. And we will drop all the ways to find you as well on our social media. Thank you both so much, and have a beautiful, not slippery weekend. Please don't break yourselves.
Not planning on it, but thank you.
You too.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thabissa's gonna take us out. So jazzy. I love it. Love to have Thabissa do the show sometime. That would be amazing.